A hymn for Holy Week begins, "There is a green hill far away outside a city wall where our dear Lord was crucified, who died to save us all." The hymn has it right for the most part. Jerusalem is my favorite place on the planet Earth, and so I'm something of a pedant about how it is depicted. The hill is in Palestine, far away. It is outside the walls where they stood during Herod's reign, though it's inside the current city walls. And it is both the tradition of the church and the consensus of archaeologists that the hill, now marked by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, contains within it the hill called Calvary, where our Lord was crucified. You can't really tell that it's a hill now, though, because of the way the buildings are built up all around it. But it's there, because underneath you can climb down some steps and look, and the walls there are glass, and you can see the rocky outcropping that rises up overhead. Yet the hymn does have one thing wrong. The hill that was far away and on which our Lord was crucified wasn't likely very green on that auspicious day in the year around 33 AD. It was, and still is, a stony outcropping. But for the sake of that one mistake, we can forgive Cecil Frances Alexander, the hymn writer, who, looking out on her 19th century Irish landscape, I'm sure couldn't help but think that all the world was as green as her dear countryside. Calvary, Golgotha, the place of the skull, whatever it is that we call it, was at the time of Jesus' life an abandoned quarry. For many years, the stone from that quarry had been used to build many of Jerusalem's buildings. But by the time of Christ, all the quality stone in that quarry had already been used up. All that was left was rubble, an unquarried stone that was unsuitable for use in building. All that could have been used had been. The stone that was left was the stone that the builders rejected. The desolation of that spot then made it a favorite place for Roman executions. In the lesson from Matthew, Jesus tells a parable that includes several executions. Instead of the violence being on a cross, it's in a vineyard. The wicked tenants who foolishly wish to claim the owner's harvest as their own kill each servant that the landowner sends into their midst. These ungrateful and despicable tenants even murder the landowner's own son when he goes and tries to talk some sense into them. Jesus then leads the Pharisees to name the tenants as the sinner in this parable. The Pharisees are not unaware that both Jesus and the crowds would identify them as the evil tenants of their own day. Yet they're trapped by the correct answer to Jesus' question. And in another moment of rhetorical triumph, Jesus has his own accusers to show themselves to be on the wrong side of the issue. The religious authorities were the ones who, time and again, had refused to hear the message of the prophets, all sent by God to tell the people what God expected of them. Time and again, prophet after prophet found himself and herself at times at least banished and exiled, if not killed. Now, God's own Son had come once and for all to show the world who God is and what God desires of God's people. And still, the religious authorities refused to hear, plotting against him every chance they got. As if to rub salt in the wound and remind them that their way would not win out, no matter who they killed, Jesus quotes Psalm 118, saying, "The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone." No matter what they try, no matter how they reject him and his message, Jesus will be the beginning of something new and unstoppable. Yet for an instant, it did all seem to stop. For there on that hill, far away, just outside the city walls, rocky and hostile to green lushness, our Lord was crucified. Jesus, the stone that the builders rejected, had been killed atop the abandoned quarry full of stone that the builders had rejected. The parallel is painfully elegant. Indeed, with the death and resurrection of Jesus, the cornerstone of the new world order was set in place. On that cornerstone would rise the church, which after the temple's destruction in the year 70 would replace the temple as the central locus of worship. We who follow Jesus, who wish to be like Jesus, who pray to follow him in the way, must come to grips with what that means for our own day-to-day lives now. Perhaps that has never been more clear for some of us than right now. The nation reels from centuries of racial inequity. Disease rages on a pandemic scale, and the current state of our political system shows all signs of implosion. What we have to say about God and how God calls us to live with one another is still very much threatening to the authorities. We place our highest allegiance somewhere else, outside of worldly power. And if our allegiance is with a power that cannot be overcome by earthly might, then our accusers become all the more threatened. If we're serious about this Jesus stuff, then we too, from time to time, will find ourselves cast aside and rejected, cast outside the city walls, the walls of comfortable society, and onto a heap of rubble and trash. Yet it was on just such a heap of rubble that the Lord of all was vindicated. It was on just such a place outside the walls where the vandals and wild animals ran amok that a new start was made. What seemed like rejection was actually a beginning. The cornerstone was set. The world was set on a new course. God's love and mercy were made manifest. What then might God do with our own places of rubble and rejection? Only God knows, and only God can tell. But trust this: our footings cannot be rocked by earthquake or wind or tsunami or hurricane. Though all that we know may fall away, though all whom we love may turn against us, we are standing on something solid and immovable. Might we be given the grace to live our lives as Jesus lived, to die to self as Jesus died, and to be raised atop a new foundation. And in our living, dying, and rising, might we bear witness to the marvelous love and generosity of our God, who even now calls all that is into this great building project that is God's dream for creation. I am thankful that the Spirit and you have called me into your midst. Together we have big work to do, building upon the cornerstone of our faith to help usher in the impending reign of God. Greensboro needs us. So let's get started.